Good evening or morning or whatever time of the day it happens to be. Welcome one, welcome all to the Writer's Bleck podcast. My name is Greg Nikes. I am your host. I had the absolute pleasure this week of sitting down with Meredith Walker on the podcast. She is an author, she is a television producer, she's the co-founder of Smart Girls with Amy Poehler, and we had a lovely conversation about her new book, Be Yourself and Other Bad Advice, a teen girl's guide to unlearning the rules. We'll dive into how her career producing for Nick News and Saturday Night Live influenced the direction of her career trajectory, her advice for navigating adolescence both in person and online, and how much that advice has changed over even the last decade, her tips on, regardless of your age, just being yourself, and so much more. Writer's Bleck Podcast Season 2 is winding down, guys, so please, if you want to be a part of the show, send us an email. We are writersbleckpod@gmail.com. We would love to talk to authors of all shapes and sizes, or writers, or filmmakers, or whoever you may be. If you have a writing bone in your body and wanna chat about your projects, we'd love to sit and talk with you guys, or even get ahead on the queue for Season 3, because we are going to take a short hiatus here in a little bit, and we'll be back for Season 3, hopefully in the fall. But please send us an email, and we'd love to talk to you guys. If you're enjoying the Writer's Block podcast, leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcasting platform of choice. And don't forget to follow along with us over on social media. We are Writer's Block Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, the latter of which you can find the video version of this podcast. And you can find me at Lego My Grego TV on Blue Sky and YouTube, my own YouTube, not another one. Yeah. All right, guys, without any further ado, let's get into the episode with Meredith Walker. It's going to be a blast. Early in your career, you worked on Nick News, which was pretty unique in the way that it spoke seriously to young people about very serious topics at the time. Did that experience influence how you communicate with young people today?
That's such a great question. Thank you. Yes, it totally does. Very early on, that I had that job in my 20s, and very early on, you realize when you're interviewing kids that like doing that kind of awesome. What else did you do? Like they're like, what are you talking about? And when you'd go in and just say, hey, let's talk about what's going on, what happened at school, and talk to them in a real way, you'd have the best story and the best interview because they were so at ease and ready to express themselves because they could tell you were really interested. Since then, that's how I've conducted myself is not that I was phony baloney before that, but it just realizing when you're really interested and you show somebody that they feel it and then you are able to convey information and hear their story in a better, more high quality way.
So you worked in TV for years, and you've had such a multifaceted career. I'm always curious about the trajectories getting from, a career in television or in film or whatever to what you're doing now, which is you're helping young people. Like you've devoted your life to that cause. What did that road look like for you to kind of maybe not change lanes, but change focus, I suppose?
It's such a roller coaster. It really is like such an ups and downs and figuring it out as I went kind of thing. It wasn't, I kind of followed my knowledge, my self-knowledge and my curiosity is kind of how I got here because I felt great when I was at Nick News. And then there were parts of Saturday Night Live I loved, but parts that didn't really feel like a match, where I was like feeling like a super winner every day. And then Amy Poehler and I started Smart Girls, and that's when I felt it again. I thought, ooh, I feel like I'm living with the person I wanted to be in this really good way. And but I had to just kind of keep following and learning the hard way and like not getting it right there. Like in between all that, I worked on some shows that weren't great, some that were fun. But I think that what happened was I realized that, especially through the show that Amy and I started with, was called Smart Girls at the Party. We just wanted to invite girls to come on and tell us about their lives. And I kept finding myself drawn more and more and more to that. And I was always drawn, I mean, my whole life I was drawn to just the subject of adolescence. You know how sometimes it can be worms or dinosaurs or, food, whatever it is. And mine was I liked learning more about adolescence. And so it was just the convergence of all those things. And then hearing girls through the years, like you'd think social media was like when something happened, but just hearing girls talk through the years, always the same subjects came up, and that was high pressure. They felt pressure all the time, about what they were supposed to be doing and what their life should look like. And every time I would go and speak to it could be a Girl Scout group or a school assembly or whatever it was, and I would talk about the times I didn't know where my career was going, or I felt a little confused, or I had messed up, I had made a big mistake, or whatever. That's when girls would stand in line to come talk to me afterwards and say, I feel so much relief that that can happen. And when you hear that, you think, well, I've got to tell more girls then, you know? And so that's why I wanted to write the book, kind of conveying all that.
So your new book, "Be Yourself and Other Bad Advice," is full of wisdom to help teenage girls navigate through the challenges of modern day adolescence. What about the pressures of teen girls growing up today inspired you to write this book now? And how different do you think this project would have been if you did it, to even 10 years ago?
How long do we have? It had been 10 years ago. That was a different, that girls were getting a lot of different messages from all around them 10 years ago, more than ten years ago. But there was a lot of like girl empowerment. You can do anything. There was a lot out there to try and really help improve the lives of girls and women and young people. And so it's a different world right now. Girls really do feel so much pressure to perform and achieve. There's a real kind of achievement complex going, in this culture. And, that's great, whatever. But the thing is, you can't have everything you do in service of a future achievement, whether that's everything you're thinking about is like, how will this look on a college application, or how will this affect my job prospects in the future? You also need to just live, and you need to try things on for size, and you need to mess up and learn what that feels like, and learn what it feels like to recover from that, and just kind of be okay not being perfect and not knowing everything that you're, not knowing what the next step is going to be, and letting yourself be a beginner at things. And that's what this book is supposed to help them do, is kind of unlock from the achievement goal, and realize you can actually just learn about yourself by living your life and being in the moment.
The title is really interesting because being like "be yourself" is usually a term that's treated as like a universally good thing. Just be yourself and
Right.
it'll all be fine. What made you realize that the phrase can actually become a little more confusing or even unhelpful for young people? And similarly, what was the inspiration for the "Unlearning the Rules" moniker?
Well, as far as the being yourself part goes, it just made me laugh because even as a woman in my 50s, if I'm about nervous because I'm about to go out on stage to a podium and someone would be like, "Stop, like don't even be nervous, just be yourself. You're going to be fine." And it never makes me feel better. And it didn't make me feel better when I was 13 or 23 or 33, and it won't, because in that moment that's not comforting. But the reason why it applies to this book is because it also skips an important step, which is you have to spend time getting to know yourself and have an idea of who yourself is to be able to implement that kind of advice, like go out there and be myself, and to have that foundation. And that's what is skipped. And so that's what the book and its prompts and questions and reflections hopefully leave you at the end feeling like you know yourself better. And that is, it is, there's just, it's there. Living in society means there are just things we do and things we go along with and things, and that's fine. We get it. Of course, that keeps things running and keeps things going smoothly for the most part. But you know what? It's okay to question stuff. And that isn't always encouraged. It's okay to question stuff and like, why do we do it that way? Why do people expect me to act this way? What's expected of women, and all that kind of stuff. And so that's another aspect of this book, is just like to show that it's okay to just ask why, figure that out, and figure out what you really think about some of the things that you're going to come up against in life.
A lot of self-help messaging tells young people to love yourself, but it can almost feel impossible when you're struggling with mental or emotional issues.
Mhm.
How do you approach self-worth in a way that feels realistic instead of performative?
Well, I think that first of all, like this is more about self-understanding, because I just think that that's a foundational thing that helps so much when, especially during adolescence, you just get so in the grips of fitting in. It's just biological, it goes back in time. You're supposed to, fitting in is a little bit safer. But because of that, you'll override yourself more than even lose yourself, and then you get confused and you're like, why do I feel bad about myself? And just so all of these things, self-understanding is just it's a great foundational thing to start getting in place. I think that a way, especially for younger people, to get introduced to the idea of kind of self-regard, self-esteem, all the selves, is to kind of figure out what you do like about yourself, what you do find interesting about yourself. And then when you act in life in a way that matches up with that, it does help you out. I think it really does make a difference in your mental health. You feel like you're on a firmer foundation because you're not being performative. You're coming from a place that you do understand about yourself and that you do find interesting about yourself. And a lot of times we just aren't asked, we don't know the right questions to ask ourselves to kind of get to that point. And there's some exercises in the book that kind of get you there. It's kind of like if you were an alien and you came into your room and you looked around, what would you think? What would you figure out about that person? And just kind of when you can take yourself as a out and think and observe yourself a little bit, you can find out some interesting things. And I also think it's good to try and be reminded that there are things that are going all right. That doesn't mean that the things that aren't growing right aren't, those are real. That's happening. But there's also stuff that is going right. And it doesn't have to be like some big headline grammar grabber kind of thing. It could be, like my blanket does keep me warm and that makes me feel more comfortable. That's a good thing in your day, believe it or not. And that's not phony. That's not, that's why gratitude and those things that can kind of help you out, they get so squishy sometimes. And you need to be reminded that there are things that are just real in your life that are okay.
So you, along with Amy Poehler, you co-founded the Smart Girls Project, which launched during a much more, let's say, optimistic era for the internet. When you look at online culture now, do you still feel hopeful about the digital spaces for young women?
The thing about the internet and social media and everything out there is, there's so much bad, but there's so much good too. That's where you can find your people. If you're interested in global warming, you can find a group there that's doing something about it. If you're interested in helping dogs find homes, there's a group there for that. And so I do feel hopeful for that. You can find high quality, fact checked, well researched information there and find other people who are interested in that. And so I do feel like that's really good. But where it's so sketchy, it's just like, oh my gosh, where do we even begin? But the way that people still feel so emboldened to just say things and write things down because they kind of they forget the human connection. That is a bummer. And so I still highly encourage participating in real life away from screens and reading books and going out of doors and doing things and getting together with friends in that way too, if it's possible. I know that for some people, especially in like highly rural places, you're connecting with people that live far away from you, and that's still cool and that counts. That's a great connection to have. But also get yourself off the screen sometimes because people act weird there.
Yeah, it feels like everybody online seems to have an opinion, especially with like the rise of AI, and advice isn't always the most healthy or accurate when it's coming from Steve over here.
Right.
For you, how do you think we teach independent thinking in this day and age without making young readers feel completely overwhelmed?
I know it's the thing. It's like, how does it not feel like homework? How do you do that? And I think sometimes a sneaky way in is to kind of, especially like if you are talking to a young person about social media specifically, and you point out there's an algorithm and it's trying to manipulate you, like you are the thing being manipulated. Sometimes that really grabs their attention, like whoa, and that'll stop them from giving too much of their time, like feeding the oligarchy, ads and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's a good way. It's just kind of like breaking it down about like what's really going on here, and that anything that helps it feel like they're in on something kind of helps out sometimes.
What do you think has surprised you the most after spending years listening to girls talk honestly in these workshops and community spaces you've been a part of?
Well, I want to say what surprises me the most is, but it shouldn't, it doesn't really, is how intelligent and expressive and deep young people are. They know so much. They know what's going on in the world. They know what's going down, and they want to have real conversations about it. And they don't want to be asked all the time just what their future goals are. They want to talk now about what's going on. And I love that. At the same time, knowing what we know now, knowing how much quality information is out there, knowing how easy it is to find out how to find quality information, the amount of people that believe the crap that they hear um, and fall for, and then compare themselves against is you just want to be like, oh my gosh, no, that's fake. That was not even a real photo. The thing that you're judging yourself against, that's not even a real image. That's what still surprises me. But more than anything, it's just the relentless pressure they're under. It just hasn't changed at all, and hearing them feel like they can't give themselves a break sometimes still catches my attention quite a lot because there have been so many people trying to say through the years, to give yourself a break. But it's a hard one to really adapt.
I'm curious, while you were writing this book, did you find yourself realizing that there were still rules that you personally hadn't fully unlearned yet?
Yes. I think that's why I think this is a book for everybody at every age. I think it's always good to check in with yourself about what you really think and how your perspective has expanded or changed or not changed. I think it's a really good thing to check in. I really have felt that my definition of success has evolved in a great way, but there are still times where you think, at this age, I should have this much and this should be going on. And who says? You know, no one says. You know what I mean when I say no one
Yeah.
says. Like that's up to me. And for me to keep comparing myself to like, what they're by now you should have this and this and this. And if you want to feel safe, you should have this.
Yep.
And so I still am susceptible to like, oh my God, that's right. I should have all that, but I don't. Everything's fine. Everything's great.
Yeah. It's a thing I've been trying to kind of really be kinder with myself about and tell myself is like it's okay to still be in work in progress.
Oh,
And I think that's just
forever.
it's such good universal advice. Like you're always going to be building on yourself. You're always going to be working on yourself, and you know.
Right.
So I have a couple more questions, then we're kind of winding down. A few that I ask
Okay.
everybody, and just a couple more that are specifically for you. If you could go back in time and talk to your teenage self for 5 minutes, what do you think she'd be most surprised to learn about who you became?
Ooh, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, what a great question. God, in a way I feel like she might not be surprised because she always even when I was young, like BS and like phony baloney stuff was such a bummer to me. And so I think that I'd be like, I knew it. Like I knew you wouldn't fall for any traps. Um, but I also think, well, I think she'd be very surprised that she lives in Texas again because I got out. I was like, get by. And I lived in New York forever. But now I'm back here and I'm so happy with a quieter life. And I think that would surprise young me was like, New York, like let's go live, live, live. And the fact that I'm quietly satisfied is would be very interesting. And she'd want to know a lot more about that.
What is next for you, I suppose? Maybe not next, but like bucket list item. Like what is a project that you really want to work on going forward?
Bucket listy, besides wanting to like ride trains through Switzerland and hike, things like that, I would really like to explore the world even more. I would love to teach classes about the stuff that's in the content that we cover, the subjects that we cover in this book. I think that there's something about being in rooms with girls that kind of helps this stuff really get going in a strong way. And I would really love to be able to take it somewhere and teach it in a real way. But until then, I'll just visit schools and do it one at a time.
You got to start somewhere.
You gotta start somewhere. Come on.
Yeah. And then lastly, and this is one that always stuns people, so please feel free to take your time on it.
Okay.
I'm always curious, is there a question that you always want someone to ask, whether it's about the book or about another project or about you personally, that they just never ask that you really wish they would?
People tend to, when they're asking me stuff, it can focus so much on my career history and not so much on my character history and how I grew as a person. And I don't even know if I'd be able to answer that in an eloquent way that's worth sharing. But I think that the arc of a person is just such an interesting thing. We all make mistakes. We all have mishandled situations. There's just something so inspirational to me when I hear about that and hear people being like, I wanted to get better than that. And I just think that that's something to really hear about. And especially, I think that's even more potent right now. There are so many people in power that are um, love throwing out insults and don't think twice about cruelty. And people are cheering that on in a lot of different ways. Um, and I think hearing about good character is it's such an important thing, and it's such a great thing to aspire to. And hearing every example you can about that is so helpful. And so I like talking about that.
I love that answer, Meredith. I think
Okay.
that's
Oh,
that's the right
good.
answer.
Oh,
Uh,
thank God. Okay, good.
yeah. Thank you
I
so
still
much.
seek approval.
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. This has been an absolute delight. Where can people go to find more from you, to find the book, to find all the cool stuff that you're doing?
Oh, thank you so much. I think come visit me on Instagram. I'm Meredith on Instagram, and that's really my home base for the most part until further notice. But if you please go get the book and go to walk around, go outside, get a cup of coffee, and go to your favorite indie bookstore, or even better yet, find a new one you haven't been to yet. and go in there and get it. Or if you like shopping online and doing it that way, find it there. But just no matter your age or where you are in life, I recommend doing the prompts and questions in the book, because everyone deserves a checkup on what they're thinking about themselves and where they are in life.
I couldn't agree more, Meredith. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. That was really fun. Your questions are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Next week on the Writer's Block podcast, guys, I'm sitting down with award-winning author Ada Salazar to talk about her new poetry and young adult adventure book, Stream. It's such an interesting concept. The whole book is told through poetry, and it tells the story of these two teenagers that are on this heartwarming yet a little unhinged adventure throughout their summer break. So please, next week on the podcast, we'll have that. Ada Salazar. Tune in. You're not going to want to miss it. And as always, guys, if you're enjoying the Writer's Block podcast, please consider leaving us a review over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow along with the Writer's Block podcast over on social media. We are at Writer's Block Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, the latter of which you can find the video version of this podcast. And as I mentioned at the top of the episode, gang, we are wrapping the season. We're winding down a little bit. So if you want to get involved in the show before season 2 ends, or even get ahead on season 3, please send an email to writersblockpod@gmail.com. We would love to talk to you guys about your projects or your not project. I guess project is kind of an all-encompassing term, isn't it? Because it books and then pivoted to movies or poetry or blogging or stage plays or music. But no, I just said project, and then that's kind of the all-encompassing term. This is why I need a producer who will yell at me and beat me when I do things wrong. That will wrap us up this week, guys. Thanks again to Meredith Walker for joining us. And thank all of you guys for tuning in this week. Until next time, I've been Greg. You've been awesome. And keep writing.